So the doctrine lapse came. Okay. What was the doctrine lapse? The doctrine lapse it was the final wave of annexions occurred under Lord Dalhousie, who was the governor of from 1848 to 1885. Rather, if I am not mistaken with the dates, it's 1856. Sorry, 1848 to 1856. He devised a policy that became to be known as the doctrine lapse. What is that policy? The doctrine declared that if any Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse. That is, it will become a part of the company territory. East India Company will take over. One kingdom after another was annexed simply by applying this doctrine. Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur and Jhansi. That is when Jhansi, Rani Lakshmibai said, "मैं अपनी झांसी दूंगी नहीं." She said that because she didn't have a son, male, and you were not allowed to adopt. Finally, in 1856, the company also took over Awadh. Okay. This time they had an added argument to that policy. They said they were obliged by duty to take over Adab in order to free the people from the misgovernment of the Nawab. They are obliged by this duty. They wanted to added an argument to it. That we are taking this over Awadh, we are taking over it to free the people from misgovernment by the Nawab. Enraged by the humiliation way in which the Nawab was disposed, the people of Awadh joined a great revolt that broke out in 1857. Then Warren Hastings came, 1773 to 1785, played a significant role in the expansion of company power. They had not only acquired power in Bengal but also in Mumbai, Bombay and Madras. But these territories were broadly divided into administrative units. Offices were made called presidencies. Okay. Bengal, Bombay and Madras was taken over. Bengal was a huge part. Madras was totally, and Mumbai was still down till just before Kerala it was there, till Karnataka. Vast area they had, and Bengal was the biggest headquarters. And there were 3 presidencies only: Bengal, Madras, Bombay. The supreme head of this administration was the Governor General. Warren Hastings was the first Governor General, introduced several administrative reforms in the sphere of justice also. Now they are slowly starting taking the power, they are controlling everything. See how they played the game. In 1772, a new system, justice, came into action. What was that justice? East district will have 2 courts. One a criminal court and one a Faujdari. Faujdari is criminal court and a civil court is Diwani Adalat. Okay. Still now we have that civil court and criminal court. In the civil court, this marriage happens, land problem, and whatever other things official work go on. Faujdari court is, criminal court is all about crime. Now, Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted Indian laws for the European district collectors, who presided over civil courts. They told the British people, interpreted the language, telling them what is the rules, what happens in our laws here. But the criminal courts were still under a Qazi and a Mufti, but under the supervision of the collectors. Now, Sardar Diwani Adalat was there and a Sardar Nizamat Adalat was there. Diwani Adalat was the civil court, main court, and Sardar Nizamat was the criminal court. Now, for civil and criminal, 4 courts were made. 4 provincial courts, district wise. One district will have a civil, one district will have a Faujdar, then they have registrar courts and munsif courts. For all official paperwork, your building, land, it was made. Qazi is the word for a court judge in Urdu. In 1775, 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of Hindu laws. N.B. Khaled translated this digest into English. In 1778, a code of Muslim laws was also compiled for the benefit of European judges. Muslim laws were there. Now, under the Regulating Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was established, while a Court of Appeal, the Sardar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up at Kolkata. That is the High Court and a Supreme Court. Collector. The principal figure of the Indian district was the collector. His main job was to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law and order in his district with the help of judges, police officers and darogas. His office was called the Collectorate, became the new center of power and patronage that steadily replaced previous holders of authority. British are putting their own people in. Collector is there. He is the main boss after the CM, but collector has got a lot of power. Okay, this was during the doctrine lab, these things happened. Okay, then we go up to this Warring Hastings, I told you, Bombay, Madras, everything I told you, Diwani Adalat I just now told you. Then comes the company army. What was the company army during this time? Colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration, reform, but its power rested on its military strength. We know earlier you have read the Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry, that is Sawars trained soldiers on horseback, and infantry, that is Paidal, by foot soldiers. They were given training in archery, tir-andazi, and the use of the sword. The cavalry dominated the army, and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have a large professionally trained army, infantry. They didn't want many people on foot, they wanted horse guys. The rural areas had a large number of peasants who were armed with guns and all, Local zamindars often supplied the Mughals with pedal soldiers. When the Mughal successor states like Awadh and Banaras started recruiting peasants into their army and training them as professional soldiers, East India Company also adopted the same method when it began recruiting for its own army. It came to be known as the Sepoy. From Indian, the word Sipahi meaning soldier. The warfare technology changed in 1820. The cavalry requirements of the company's army declined. This is because British Empire was fighting in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt, where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. Matchlocks are, gun you have to sharpen gunpowder and then shoot, and light it and then shoot. Muskets are a heavy gun used by infantry soldiers. They needed more people. They were getting less. People were dying also. But in 19th century, they started beginning to develop uniform military culture. Soldiers were given training, European style training, drill, discipline, regulated their life far more before. Often this created problems since caste and community feelings were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. Could people give up their caste and religious feelings? Could they see themselves only as soldiers and not as members of the communities? That was being very tough. What did the Sipahis feel? That we'll come to know in the revolt of 1857 when we read that. So this way, the East India Company was transferred from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. That's how they came into it. The new steam technology came in, aided to this process. It would take 8 to 6 months to travel to India by sea. Steamships reduced it in time in 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come to far off country like India. In 1857, they got 63% of the territory, direct rule, and 78% of the population of Indian subcontinent they took over. Combined with its indirect influence, rest of the indirect influence was remaining on the territory and population of the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. This is how it came in. Okay, this is what happened. So we'll keep it till there today and see you in the next class. This chapter is done. I hope I was able to explain properly to you and the expansion. So this was a backdrop. This is how they expanded. Otherwise you won't know how they expanded. And after that we'll come to know more about it in the next chapter. See you. Take care. Be good and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.